So Metroid Prime 4 had a huge info dump today with a massive trailer, the biggest, best look at the game yet, and the previews releasing. And I woke up ready to go, and all I got was goofiness. What's going on, everybody? It's Zach from SwitchForce. Today we're talking about the goofy takes, and the reason I think people are being dumb about Metroid Prime 4 in their previews and in what they're saying about the game as we wait for Nintendo's epic title to release in just a couple weeks. Metroid Prime 4 has been highly anticipated. Heavily anticipated. Every H word you can think of, huge, heavenly, oh boy, it has been waited for. It's about here, and people are starting to do the little freak out thing. Or they're starting to just be negative because they know that draws clicks. And boy, did I click, because a lot of sites got their previews out today. They were invited by Nintendo to play the game, and they got to play the first hour, and they're making some strange assessments and strange assumptions about this game, and deeming it to not fit the Metroid formula, but also fit the Metroid formula too much. So let's talk all about it. I'd love to know your take and your thoughts in the comments down below. Hear what I have to say and then give me your response, all right? Metroid Prime 4, look, this is a game that is not going to be right Pokemon. It's not going to be Animal Crossing. We know that. But Nintendo is doing something here that I think is really freaking cool. They're making a game that is technologically trying to be advanced. It was a Switch 1 game, and it now is a Switch 2 version. But nonetheless, the Switch 2 version goes to 120 frames per second. It's got HDR, 4K visuals, and 60 frames per second. It's trying to be Nintendo's best, baddest, coolest game. It's a first-person shooter with mouse controls. It's doing things that not even Microsoft and Sony are often capable of. That alone is wow, that's really cool, right? That's really cool. And then Nintendo is trying to do a very cinematic game by having cutscenes, a big villain, and a lot of supporting characters that we're going to touch on and talk about for a long time in a minute. But let me just say that my blank take was, wow, that trailer looked good. They showed 7 minutes. They showed all these different areas, all these different locales. It's got this open world desert between the locations. Of course, Samus is marooned on a planet where her abilities are gone. She has to get them back, navigate her way through the planet, face off against bosses, and then defeat Psylocke to save the day and save an ancient civilization. Sounds a lot like Metroid. And after all these years, I think sounding like Metroid is probably what people would want. And according to their previews, that is what they want, but it's also not what they want. And let me just say that yes, Zelda and Mario have taken huge steps, right? Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, giant leaps for that franchise. I don't know that Metroid Prime is as antiquated as Zelda had gotten to be. I don't know if it's as stale for a couple of reasons. One, the first-person shooter is still a very popular format. It's not as popular as it was, say, 7, 8 years ago. It's still pretty popular. Two, really great graphics and bombastic cinematics and big boss battles. Kind of very modern, okay? I think that this game is pretty new just based on what it's trying to be. And then there's the fact that Nintendo hasn't made one of these in a very, very long time. It's been 8 years almost since they announced this thing. It's been forever, right? It's been so freaking long. Over 8 years. It's been so long. So you can't really say wow, they did this before. Because they did it before so long ago. What, 15 plus years ago? Do it again. Do it again. I don't think this game looks antiquated, old, or held back in any way. Yes, it was built on the Switch 1, but if it's doing the Metroid Prime thing again, well, it's been a freaking long time. We don't have so much repetition, and we don't have a formula where it felt like it was getting a bit stale. Everything in the action sort of light RPG area of the Zelda franchise was going open world, was going big, and so the idea of corridor-driven, map-driven, get this item, then go to this boss and defeat it, while still fun, and honestly, I'd love to see Nintendo return to that, it was feeling a bit out of date. So Nintendo needed to make a move to modernize Zelda, and they did great. I don't know that Metroid Prime needs to be modernized. Now, the way that they've chosen to modernize it in one way is that they've made the story and the supporting cast much more involved. And here is where we dig into people's problem, all right? Metroid Prime 4 has NPCs that talk and blab, and it sounds like they're pretty annoying, all right? Can't deny that. The phrases and the dialogue that's being quoted in these press previews, very bad. Very par for the course for video games as well. Let's not forget that our medium is usually not full of eloquently written, amazing, quipped characters, right? There's a lot of people that just say dumb stuff. Let's think of recent examples. Pretty much any military shooter, Horizon, Forbidden West, has Aloy being oh, I dropped that, or oh, I could use, That is a thing that games do. And if you know Nintendo, what do they love to do, especially early on in the game? Onboard the heck out of people. They are the hold your hand and get the game going group more than anybody else. So to think that Metroid Prime 4 in the grand year 2025 on the Nintendo Switch, their best-selling system ever, and the Switch 2, their fastest-selling system ever, was not going to have a hand-holdy intro for the first hour was very silly. Yes, Metroid Prime is a more adult game, and I understand if you don't really love the way Nintendo handles their intros, their tutorials. They're very, very heavy-handed with it. They grab your hand and say, come on, son, I'm going to take you for a ride. And then they even offer you opportunities to take that ride the whole way through if you want to add extra continues or ability to not die. They've got different power-ups throughout their games that make it easier or simpler for you or just make things more convenient. It's something they do. And we can argue about that in a separate video, but that is Nintendo. So when we see that they've got this Mackenzie guy and he is saying dumb things like, Samus, I think you missed something over there. I don't know why everybody is so up in arms. And they're saying that it destroys the formula, that it destroys the mood, that it destroys the vibe, that it destroys what Metroid stood for and stands for and was supposed to be, which is this isolated, eerie, quiet adventure. I counter that with, haven't a lot of us wanted Nintendo to make AAA games in a way that feels more modern and more like the rest of the industry? Voice acting, NPCs, cutscenes, that all seems to be something that Nintendo is probably trying to be a part of. Look at how lambasted Pokemon Legends ZA was for having no voice acting. And look, I understand there's a world where they have voice acting, they have cutscenes, they have a story, and it's all done masterfully. Nintendo's first rodeo with trying to do a big budget story-based single-player game ain't gonna be great from the story side. But look at these previews. Everyone says the gameplay's awesome. They all say the gameplay's awesome, and then they say, it's ruined by Mackenzie. It's ruined. I played the first hour of a Nintendo modern era game, and they held my hand, and they told me what to do, and I hate it, and it doesn't feel like Metroid. But it also feels so much like Metroid that I wish Nintendo had evolved the franchise. What? I feel like everybody's confused and just looking for something to grumble with. And let me tell you, the situations and the scenarios where you play these previews in a big group setting, in a big warehouse or a big event space, aren't great for feeling isolated and eerie and moody anyways. Even without Mackenzie, sitting next to 15, 20 other journalists, all with TVs in a row, playing Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, probably not the best way to experience that game. Even if you're a hardcore fan, you probably would much rather cozy up on your couch, play on your TV or your desk if you're gonna go mouse mode, have the lights dimmed, have your popcorn ready, and enjoy the show. Also, you would play more than an hour. I guarantee after 8 years waiting, your session would be 3 or 4 hours, and you get to see how this game evolved. But we did see in the overview trailer that these NPCs are something that continues throughout the adventure, that Samus does have other partners that attach onto her UI and attach onto her screen and definitely talk. But they're providing an element that Nintendo often does not have in their games, and something that many fans, myself included, have complained over the time and over the years, like, why doesn't Nintendo at least try this? And here they are. They're looking at games like Halo, right? They're looking at games like Battlefield. They're looking at other titles that do very well and saying, hey, a squad-based idea with characters that narrate, guide, and maybe become a fan favorite, maybe, never know. That is something that we could try, along with 120 frames per second, 4K, and mouse mode, and making this game bigger, better, and bolder. And then they try to tell you that there's nothing new in Metroid Prime 4, yet it has an open world. It has an open connective tissue, a desert, and a bike that looks so darn awesome. Viola looks fantastic as you navigate the planet, and they've shown some exploration within that desert, but surely they haven't shown all of it. Surely they haven't revealed every secret of this game. So when you read those previews and they say that they didn't get to ride the bike at all, that's the first hour, and you know that they're missing out on the big upgrade that makes this world cohesive and gigantic. Metroid Prime 4 is expanding upon the Metroid formula by introducing a bunch of new weapons, a bunch of new visuals and performance additions, and by introducing a bike in an open world, things we haven't had before. And that bike looks snazzy. Samus can counterattack on that bike. She can slide, dive, stop, pop off, ride it indoors and outdoors. It looks like a notable game-changing mechanic. And I think Nintendo is historically bad at portraying the full scope of their games in trailers and in overviews, and they want to just show you the beginning, the tip of the iceberg, right? The frosting on the cake, but maybe not a full mouthful. And that's honestly fine. Trailers often reveal too much, whether it's games or movies. They show you the best parts and then you're left feeling bland after you experience it for yourself. This is hiding a whole bunch. And I have full faith that Nintendo is going to be placing lots of interesting, exciting, experimental things throughout this Metroid Prime 4 adventure. And yes, maybe Mackenzie is very annoying. He sure seems like it. And perhaps all your partner characters, your little buddies, are annoying. But it is an interesting way for Nintendo to try to experiment with a more cinematic storyline, a single-player game that is filled with lore, cutscenes, and not just your scanning visor telling the whole story. Samus don't talk, and we can, again, argue about that and if Nintendo should have their protagonists be speaking, but they are having other characters speak. They are bringing this narrative more towards the lines of a Halo or something like that, and if it's a bit gimmicky, if it's a bit campy, if it's a bit corny, it's their first try, and also, it's a military-ish first-person shooter set with a space pirate universe. What did you expect? William Shakespeare? I don't know what people wanted out of this when the parameters are make a Metroid that feels so much like Metroid, but also feels like something brand new and worth the wait. That's very hard, and we know it's hard because Nintendo had to restart this game multiple times. They apologized, they tried to get it right, but the thing that should be at the core of everyone's focus is that nobody complained about the gameplay. They said mouse mode worked great. The game looks gorgeous. The game plays great. It was really fun. The power-ups seemed cool. We only got a couple of them because of the first hour, and there's many more, including this secret snazzy Persian pearl suit that we don't know yet what it does, a brand new thing for Samus, and I'm sure there's more upgrades, abilities, and things that you can acquire as the game goes. 1 hour and they're dooming it because of an annoying side character. First of all, a side character should not ruin an overall adventure. Second of all, I think Nintendo should be applauded for taking a bold step and trying to be like the other guys, while not sacrificing what they do best, which is gameplay. We know that the gameplay is very good. We heard that way back at the Switch 2 previews months and months and months ago, and now we're getting that affirmed and confirmed that they have got the performance where it needs to be, they've got the visuals and resolution where it needs to be, and they've got the twitchy gameplay, especially with those mouse controls, feeling like the best way to experience an FPS game. The story, yeah, I don't expect it to be legendary. I don't expect the side characters and their quips to be things that I write down in my notebook as a quote that I'm going to use on my next Jeopardy appearance. These are not those type of games. These are not those types of characters, and I actually love Nintendo for trying this. Pokemon Legends ZA would have been corny as heck if it had VO, and I would have loved it. The dialogue is corny in Pokemon Legends ZA. The dialogue is kind of goofy. The dialogue is basic, but it would have been better with VO. And I don't think Nintendo should be bashed for trying to move into a more cinematic space where they've typically kept hands off. They've got movies going, they're doing VO and side characters, they've got helpers that are trying to expand and experiment with gameplay in ways that they've seen other companies attempt, and Nintendo is now putting their spin on it. And if they go through the whole adventure and it sucks the whole way through, then we'll talk about that. But this is 1 hour of probably a 15 to 20 hour game, and who knows where it goes, and I'm sure it gets deeper, more complex, less handholdy, and a bigger, better, bolder adventure than anyone can quite put their finger on when they haven't even experienced the big open desert that is the grand change of this game, uniting the world and making it feel cohesive, adding to the mood and vibe that people are saying is completely missing because of Mackenzie when they're playing this game at a preview event with 15 or 20 other TVs right next to them, headphones on, and people all around probably saying, "Are you enjoying your adventure? You know, you can switch from mouse controls to regular Joy-Con just by lifting the..." Like, that's not a good experience to play a game. Trust me. I've done it before over the years, and while it's fine, and while you can get a good sense of a game, if you're hoping to have this like vibe session, that's not the place to do it. And so I feel like everyone's just being dumb and negative to try and get clicks and be like, Metroid Prime 4, this game that everybody's waited for. It's dumb. It's corny. Nintendo, they're ruining it. Dude, ruining it would have been canceling the game after the first failed attempt. Ruining it would have been canceling the game after the second failed attempt. Ruining it would have been giving up on the game or saying we got to start over again. Great gameplay, great graphics, a huge open world, a connective Metroid planet that seems to house tons of different atmospheres, biomes, and who knows how much more because it was just the overview trailer. I'm excited. I think this game is going to be freaking awesome, and I would not let the previews today ruin your anticipation or hype. If we play it and it sucks, but nobody's saying that it plays sucky. They're saying that a side character is driving them to want to break the disc in half, or the cartridge in half, or the game key card code in metaphorical half. That to me is extreme overreaction, and that to me is extremely silly when you know where this company has been, where they're coming from, and where maybe they're trying to go. And rather than blast them for trying something new that we've begged them to try for years, modernizing their single-player games in a way that feels maybe more AAA, let's let them see how they do. Let's give them the space to grow. Let's chance it out here and play the full adventure and see. And maybe applaud Nintendo instead for trying something new rather than just hating on it. And look, if you don't like Nintendo, if you don't like what they do, which is going to be games that cater to a wider audience, games that cater to new players and want to introduce them very slowly, the start of all Nintendo games is like, baby's first crawl, then maybe don't play Nintendo games. Or maybe take issue with how Nintendo does all of their games. But to focus on Metroid Prime and try to blast something that already is a decently niche type of title, and that I think has been trying its very hardest to be all it can be in 2025 after 8 years of development, chaos, confusion, and now trying to come out and crack a crystal out of all this rock, I think it looks good. And I think today's overview trailer was the best gameplay we've seen yet. And I don't think you can judge a game based on its first hour. Many games are boring in the first hour. And many games, especially Nintendo games, do not reveal their true selves, their true core, until hour 3, 4, 5. And that can be, again, judged, that can be criticized, that's fine. But don't go in deciding that this game has made a huge mistake and doesn't feel like Metroid and isn't doing anything new after 1 hour of play. All right, I am rolling my feet out on this little foot massager under my desk because I could talk about this for 30, 40, 50 minutes. I just think it's foolish. I think the journalists of today are not the journalists of what they were when I was younger and when I would read cool reviews and cool previews and see people that were genuinely about it. I feel like people aren't about it anymore. I don't know. It's just weird, and I feel like there is this hunger for clicks that leads people to negativity, and while there's a place for that, of course, and while we will call out games, just like I said, I think Pokemon Legends ZA is held back in so many ways, and I think they take the cheap way, the easy way out at so many turns. I'm not afraid to say that. I'm not about to judge a game because Mackenzie gets on my nerves. Let me know your take in the comments down below, everybody. Until next time, we're a couple of weeks away from finding out fully for ourselves what the entire Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is all about. Until that time, though, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive out there. Love y'all lots. SwitchForce, out.